Hey guys, welcome back to the 47th episode of the Huggy Poker Vlog. For this one, we are back at the 1-2 no limit game at the Lodge in Round Rock, Texas, and we're hoping to score another 4-figure win following our last big session. We buy in for the max of $300, and while waiting to get seated at a 1-2 table, we end up playing a few hands at the bomb pot table. Every hand is $5, and it's played as a PLO double board bomb pot where there's no pre-flop action and everyone goes straight to the flop, or in this case, 2 flops. In our first interesting hand at the bomb pot table, we're dealt ace-ace 3-deuce with diamonds. It's a pretty damn good high-low hand, but unfortunately we're just playing for the high here. We've got 9 players to the flop as it comes down 3-3 deuce on top and 5-6-8 with 2 spades on bottom. So we end up flopping the absolute nuts on the top board with the full house. Action checks to us, and I don't want to wait to start building the pot here since people love to call with draws in this game, and there are a ton of draws across both boards. I make it $35. We get 3 callers and the 4 of us head of the turn, which brings the 8 of clubs on top and the jack of hearts on bottom. The first player checks and I make it $100. It's a bit on the bigger side, but with the flop bet narrowing the field so much, I'm hoping to fold out any draws we're ahead of on the bottom board or anyone that might be calling with a non-nutted straight with the idea that we just try to go for a scoop with no showdown. We end up just getting 1 caller, so we're heads up to the river where we see the queen of clubs on top and the ace of clubs on bottom. So the backdoor flush comes in on top, though that doesn't change anything for our hand, and we pick up top set on the bottom board. I push all in for our last $145, we get called, and our opponent shows that he's got the nuts on bottom. So unfortunately we're chopping the pot, which means that we don't get any value out of the turn to river bet since we're heads up across those streets, but we do split everything else. We get moved to the holdem game, but not before losing about $50 more on another PLO bomb pot hand, so now we transfer over with about $280 left in our stack. There's an early position raised to $10, and the cutoff calls in our right. We look down at Jack 10, it's not suited, but we've got position, so I go ahead and call. Both the blinds call too, and we've got 5 players to the flop, which comes down 9 high with 2 clubs. Everyone checks to us, and I opt to check back here to take our free card in hopes of improving. The turn brings the 7 of clubs, giving us a gut shot along with a jack high flush draw. The big blind leads out for $15, and the next 2 players fold. I make the call with our draws, and the small blind calls as well. The river's a pretty damn good one. It's an offsuit 8, giving us a jack high straight. As long as no one's got the flush, then we've got the best hand. If anyone has a 10 in their hand, we're bound to get paid off here too. Both players check, and now I'm assuming we've got the best hand, so I put out a bet of $50 hoping for some value. The small blind folds, and the big blind eventually makes the call. Straight. 6 card straight. I announce our hand, and it's good. 10 minutes later, we straddle under the gun for $5, and it folds to the cutoff, who raises to 20. The button and both blinds fold, and it's on us. We look down at ace-5 off, and I decide to put in the chips to call. We're heads up, and I check dark to a flop of ace-deuce-7 with 2 hearts. So we managed to hit top pair with our ace, and the preflop raiser c-bets for $25. I make the call, and the turn brings the 7 of hearts pairing the board, and also bringing in the flush draw. I check a second time, and the preflop raiser bets again, this time for $55. With our opponent being in late position like he is, I think there's a chance we still could have the best hand, and he could just be semi-bluffing with a backdoor flush draw I picked up on the turn with a hand like king-queen maybe with the king of hearts, but I'd rather just give him credit for a hand here and look for a better spot. This isn't the best turn card for us as both the flush comes in and any other ace is likely to be ahead or chopping at the very least. With that, I go ahead and throw this one away. The very next hand, we are involved in another double board bomb pot which happens on every dealer change at this table. We're dealt ace-king 8-6 double suited in spades and clubs. There's 9 players to the flop as it comes down jack-6-king rainbow on top and jack-ace-jack rainbow on bottom. So we flop top and bottom pair on the top board and top pair top kicker on bottom. We have to assume that anyone holding the jack is in pretty good shape here though. Action ends up checking all the way around and we get a free turn. It brings the 7 of hearts and the 4 of spades, which probably doesn't change much. I lead for $15 to try to get a feel for where we are, and we end up getting a few folds. The middle position player raises to $35, the cutoff calls, and I don't think we can fold for this price quite yet, so I make the call as well. The river brings the 10 of diamonds and the 9 of clubs, so we're losing to quite a bit here at this point. It's pretty likely we were behind the whole way on bottom, and there's now many better 2-pair and straight combinations on the top board as well. The player who raised probably has the case jack, and if they've got a king to go along with it, our 2-pair is certainly beat. I check with the intention of folding to a bet, and it checks through to the cutoff, who bets pot for $132. I fold, and the last player folds too, so the cutoff ends up scooping without a showdown.
You got king jack? Yeah.
I thought so. Okay, good. I had king 6 and I had an ace up on bottom. I was like, you definitely have the jack. I was like, if you got the king, I'm crushed. 3 hands later, we're dealt 9-7 suited on the button. It folds to the hijack, who raises to $17. We make the call in position, and both blinds call as well, so we've got 4 players to the flop. It comes down king 6-7 with 2 diamonds. Everyone checks to us, and our hand could possibly be best here, so I bet a little under half pot for $30 with our second pair. Just the big blind calls, so we're heads up to the turn, which is a pretty bad one as it brings the ace of diamonds. There's now 2 overcards to our pair, and the flush comes in too. The big blind checks again, and I don't really want to try to bluff at this board, so I go ahead and check back. The river ends up bringing an offsuit 9, so we managed to pick up 2 pair now. When the big blind checks a third time, I'm pretty sure we've got the best hand, and I think we can safely bet for value here. I make it $65, and I guess our bet's a little too big, because after about 10 seconds of thinking, our opponent folds, and we take it down. 2 hands later, we're dealt the best hand in poker, pocket aces in the hijack. There's a $5 straddle, and the player on our right limps in. I raise to $25, and the button makes the call. The small blind then 3-bets to $85. Definitely a dream spot for us. When it folds back to us, I really don't see any reason to slow play here, and I go ahead and push all in with our opponent covered. The player between us folds, and the small blind calls.
Oh,
Good luck.
You ready?
It's alright, I'm not safe.
No, you're not. You're definitely not.
Anything can happen. There's the king. Ah, there. I knew it. Like I said. How much?
And you know what? I didn't want to say anything because I was going to tell you I had an ace too.
So unfortunately, we lose a big one to a suck out with our opponent hitting their 2-outer, but these things happen. I pay our opponent and add on for another $200, bringing our total buy-in to $500 for the session. 6 hands later, we've got pocket kings in the small blind. Maybe this is our chance for redemption. We see 3 limps, and the hijack raises to 20. The button folds, and I 3-bet to 65 with us being out of position. Everyone folds to the hijack, who power mucks his pocket queens face up. So we take down a small pot with our premium pair, but at least our hand didn't get cracked this time. 20 minutes later, we've got Jack 10 offsuit in the big blind. The end of the gun player straddles to 5, there's 1 limp, and everyone folds to us. I go ahead and make the call for $3 more, and the straddle checks his option. The flop is Queen 9-6 with 2 clubs, so we pick up an open-ended straight draw. I lead out for $11, and just the limper calls. The turn pair is the bottom card with an offsuit 6. I decide to keep the pressure on to see if we can fold out any other draws, and I make it $25. We get called again, and I figure at this point we're not getting any pairs to fold, so I'm giving up unless we hit our hand. The river brings the 9 of diamonds, double pairing the board, and we do not improve, unfortunately. And our opponent ends up checking back, so I announce our hand.
I got a jack.
Yeah.
He motions as if he's about to muck, so I think our hand is good.
Yeah! Oh no! The slow roll.
2 hands later, we've got ace-7 suited on the button. There's a $5 straddle, and the first player to act limps in. Everyone else folds around to us, and I raise to $20 in position with our suited ace. The blinds and straddle fold, and the limper 3-bets to $52.
52? Well, the 2's got me interested.
We're likely up against ace-king or a pocket pair with the limp raise, but I make the call since we've got position. The flop comes down 7-5-9 with 2 clubs, giving us second pair. Our opponent checks, and I quickly check back since we're not getting any better hands to fold, and we've got showdown value with our pair now. The turn's a brick with an offsuit deuce, and our opponent leads small now for $25. I think we've got an easy call here, and the river's pretty much a blank with the 4 of diamonds. Our opponent checks again, and we could possibly go for some thin value here, but I don't think we're getting called by too many hands that we beat, so I just check back instead. He shows ace-king for the bigger ace as expected, and our pair is good. We're mostly folding for the next orbit until we pick up 2 black aces in the small blind. There's a $5 straddle, and the middle position player raises to 20. Everyone folds to us, and I 3x the bet, making it $60. It folds back to the original raiser, and he quickly pushes all in for 146 total, and we snap call.
Let's see if they hold this time. Yeah, I believe it. And it probably will. That's a board. That is a board, yeah. That's probably a board that beats me. Wow, really? Oh, wow.
He ends up showing ace-king for just top pair on this scary board, and our aces miraculously hold up. 2 hands later, we've got a monster. 3 deuce suited in the cutoff. There's an early position raise to $10, and we see 1 call. I call with a small suited connector in position, and both blinds make the call as well. The flop is 3-4 king rainbow, giving us bottom pair with an unlikely backdoor straight draw. Both blinds check to the initial raiser, who c-bets small for $20. The player between us folds, and I put in the chips to call. Just one of the blinds calls, so we're down to 3 for the turn. And the turn is a pretty good one. It's the deuce of clubs, so we pick up 2 pair now. Granted, it's the worst 2-pair holding possible. The blind checks, and the same player continues the story for $55 now. Realistically, I think we're only losing to pocket kings against this player, and I don't want to wait to get the money in with how susceptible our hand is, so I bump it up to $155. The player in between us gets out of the way, and the original bettor goes all in for only about $15 more. We're obviously calling, and we're just hoping for a clean river now.
Yeah, 2 pair. Ooh. I got a boat.
Little tugboat.
Good Lord. That's
Our opponent's not happy, but eventually mucks, and we scoop in a nice pot. 2 hands later, we've got king-9 suited in middle position. The first 3 players limp in, and I raise to $16. The player behind us calls, and just one of the limper calls as well, so we've got 3 to the flop. We end up hitting top pair as it comes down king 8-4 with 2 spades. The first player checks, and I c-bet for $25. The player behind us folds, and the limper calls, so we're heads up now. The turn is the queen of clubs, bringing in a club draw as well. Our opponent checks again, and although our hand isn't that strong, there are a lot of draws out there, and I think we have to charge them to get there. I bet again for $60 this time. He tanks for almost a full minute, but eventually finds the call. The river brings the 8 of clubs, not the greatest river as it pairs the board and completes the backdoor club draw. In reviewing this hand after the fact, I think that we should probably be checking back here since we've got showdown value and we're not getting better hands to fold with a bet. In the moment though, I end up pushing all in for about $200 effective with our opponent covered, as I'm not really expecting him to show up with too many hands that beat us here given how draw heavy this board was from the flop and how hesitant he was to call along the way. With that said, we might be able to push him off a chop if he's got a king in his hand, and there's a small possibility that he could call us with a hand like pocket jacks. Eventually, he does fold though, and we take it down. In the next orbit, we've got 10-3 suited in the cutoff. There's a raise to $12 from the +1 player, the +2 and middle position players both call, and we've got a pretty shitty hand, but hell, it's suited, we're in good position, so I call as well. One of the blinds joins along too, and we've got 5 players to the flop. It comes down queen 7-3 rainbow, and action checks to the player across the table from us who leads out for 20. The next player folds, and we've only got bottom pair, but we're deep enough that I go ahead and make the call to see if we can improve. The remaining players fold, so we're heads up now. The turn is pretty much a dream card. It's the 3 of hearts giving us trips. Our opponent leads again, pretty big this time, making it $75. It's clear he likes his hand, so I think we can safely raise and expect to get called. I 3x his bet to $225. Eventually, we hear the magic words.
all in.
All right, I got a call. I got a 3.
Oh, you're good.
Queen can still come.
The 3s are doing it for me.
Yeah.
I didn't put you on no 3, so.
Yeah. You shouldn't. Got lucky on that one. Yeah.
Francisco, thank you for your services, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
4 hands later, we've been straddling every time we're under the gun, but somehow I miss our straddle this time. And of course, it happens to be the time we pick up a premium as we look down at pocket queens. I raise to $10 and we see 2 callers. The big blind very quickly 3-bets to 45. This player's pretty recently transferred to our table, so no reads here unfortunately. I think we've still got a 4-bet here regardless, as we've got the 3rd best starting hand and we don't want other players to call behind. I make it $145. Everyone else gets out of the way and it's back on the big blind. This guy goes into the tank. We're just sitting here waiting for this guy to act for a solid 2 minutes. Finally, after what feels like a lifetime, we hear...
Good raise.
He flashes pocket kings and throws them into the muck. I seriously can't believe this player just folded pocket kings to us. I recognized that when this player sat down from getting transferred that he had about $500 or $600 in front of him and was asking the floor about taking chips off the table due to the $300 cap. He was told though that his chips are in play since it's a transfer even though the table he came from didn't have bomb pots and this one does. I got the impression from that he's playing scared money and I think his fold here just reinforces that. There is no way I'd be folding kings in his shoes. I'd be going broke every time there if I happen to be against aces. Fortunately for us though, we got lucky that he found the fold and we end up taking it down without a flop.
Oh. You want to see?
I thought you had a smaller pair, but
All in was my only call.
Yeah.
I can't call that shit. All in or like fold.
I'm surprised he didn't rip it. 15 minutes later, there's a $5 straddle and the short stack pushes all in for $24. The player to our right calls and we've got a pair, so I call as well. The big blind and straddle both call and the 5 of us take a flop. It comes down 8-10-10 rainbow. Action checks to us, and if no one hit this flop, then our hand could be best here. I put out a small bet of $30. Everyone ends up folding, so we get a full run out versus the all-in player.
You might be good or you might get there. I've just got deuces. Oh.
He shows queen high, and our hand was good the whole way. We pick up a few playable hands over the next 45 minutes, most of them being ace-jack, but nothing's connecting, and we end up losing about $75. Eventually, we pick up ace-7 offsuit in the button. There's a double straddle this hand for $7 and $15 respectively. There's one limp, and it folds around to us. We look down at a not-so-great ace, but we're in position on the button, and there's a lot of money out there, so I decide to get aggressive and put in a raise to $50. The small blind folds, and the big blind, who's in the process of racking up, ends up putting in a 3-bet to $232. This guy's been pretty aggressive, but I don't really want to speculate here with this holding, so I throw it into the muck.
Alright, I guess he got me crushed. Nice.
Finally, our last interesting hand comes almost a half hour later. Action folds to the hijack who makes it $10, and we look down at 7-4 suited. I make the call, which honestly I think mostly comes out of boredom from not playing too many hands over the past 45 minutes or so, and the big blind folds. We're heads up to the flop, which comes down 10-7 jack rainbow, giving us bottom pair. I check to our opponent who c-bets for $10, and I make the call. The turn brings a 6 of clubs, giving us a backdoor flush draw now. He bets again, pretty small though, for $15, making him seem not too confident about his hand. I think with our added flush draw, we can get aggressive here sometimes, and I decide to do just that with a check raise. I go pretty big, making it $85. He thinks for about 20 seconds and eventually shows us the king of spades before mucking his hand. It seems we were probably ahead either way on this board, but I'm happy to take down one last pot for the night.
Pretty good session. Played some 1-2 for a little less than 4 hours. Bought in for 500 in all, 300 originally. Got our aces cracked by kings early. Rebought for another 200, so we were down 200 at that point. But made our way back up. Cashed out for what was it, $1462 before hourly fees and tips and all. So a little less than $1,000 win. It was about $920, I think, is what we won in the end there. So. Really happy with that result, especially given the early negative sitting in the red there. So good comeback overall. Not too much to say about it other than there were just some really fun and interesting hands. Didn't feel like there was like too much in terms of like crazy strategy to talk about. You know, made a few marginal calls in some spots in hopes of hitting, and we got there in a couple spots, so that's always nice. But otherwise, I think a lot of the play was kind of straightforward and just kind of played itself. But in any case, never hurts to have some sessions like those. You know, if you enjoyed it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. See you on the next one. Take care.